In a soul-bearing memoir of her life before, with and after her marriage to South Africa's world-renowned author André Brink, Karin Szczurek details a year of widowhood and a love to last a lifetime. Entitled The Fifth Mrs Brink, is also a homage to a marriage cut tragically short by Brink's death in 2015 at 79 years old, and a diary of creative dissolution and knitting back together. Karina joins us in studio to talk more about her book, The Fifth Mrs Brink. It's so great to have you in studio. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. It's lovely to be here.
A book like this, detailing your life, detailing so many personal aspects of your relationship as well. What was it like putting this together for you?
It definitely wasn't easy. And there were many times when I was writing this book where I really didn't see what I was typing on the screen because I was weeping it out of myself.
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult journey, but one that I thought was necessary in so many ways, because I wanted to pay homage to the wonderful and precious relationship that I had with André in the one medium that meant so much to him, and that is words. And
meant so much and means so much to you as well, because even when you did meet him, I mean, you were an aspiring author and writer.
Very much so. And one of the most precious memories that I have of the time with André is that he encouraged me to grow as a writer. And I flourished under his wings.
Beautiful. That's, I suppose, one of the big takeouts of your relationship with him. But let's go back to the beginning, because you grew up in Poland. That's where you were born and lived. I mean, life in Poland for you, what was it like?
Well, I was 10 when my parents decided to leave Poland, and I had a very happy, beautiful childhood there. I didn't understand specifically that we were growing up in a totalitarian regime. I just knew that my parents were deeply unhappy with what was happening around them. And when we did leave Poland, I was unaware. They did not tell us children, I have a younger brother, that it would be forever. For us it was, we were going on a holiday. And they were scared to tell anybody that there were other plans involved.
Wow, amazing. I suppose we could talk a lot about your life and your childhood growing up, but I think where we need to sort of jump into the story, something that you do outline nicely for those of you that do read the book, but it's when you meet André Brink that is that key moment and turning point for you. You opened the door and saw this man standing there. Even though there was this 42-year age gap between you, what was your first impression when you opened the door? And where were you at the time?
We were at the airport in Vienna. I was picking André up to take him to Salzburg, where we invited him to a conference that I co-organized, and we were celebrating 10 years of democracy in South Africa at the university, and he kindly accepted our invitation. And there he was at the airport in Vienna, and that arrival hall door opened, and I was awestruck. And I knew some of his work, and I completely loved it. And to meet him was very intimidating. And yet, within the first few seconds of us shaking hands, something happened that was immediately magical and special. And there was no going back.
Amazing.
And I'm so grateful.
It's a story of movies, because I read a review from one of the critics saying that it's hard to believe that this is a real story, because this is what movies are based on. But even you yourself said that if you're watching the movie of this, you would also think, no, there's no way this actually happened. You fell in love on the train ride from the airport to Salzburg, basically.
Yes, but it was in that first encounter, everything that happened between us was really unacknowledged. So it was only when André came back to South Africa and we started corresponding. I wrote him a thank you letter, and then he responded, and then the correspondence followed from there. We realized that, yes, what was happening was real. And yet there were only these letters. And only months later, when we met again in Paris at another conference, suddenly within the first few minutes we realized that everything that we had written to one another was true and real, and it had a way of being in the world.
Yeah, and that age gap didn't mean anything to you?
No, I still cannot explain really why, but the moment we met, and anybody who then met us as a couple understood that the age gap was only of the significance that we knew that one day I would be alone. If nature took its course, this is what would happen. But we decided to take the risk and to have as much time as we possibly could together. And I always told André, you never know, you really do not know, and let's just be brave and use this opportunity to be happy together. And we could have had 20 years together, we could have had 2 years together, I could have died within a week of meeting him. But here I am, and I am the surviving one, as predicted.
Absolutely. I mean, as you've said, this was a very emotional journey for you to write and to, I suppose in a way, almost cathartic as well. But did you also feel that it would clear up some controversies and some mysteries surrounding André Brink and your relationship, as well as those controversies in his life, such as Jan Rabie, as well as Marjorie Wallace Bursary in 2009. Do you think that this is bringing the truth out?
I don't know whether it is the truth. It is the truth the way I lived it or the way we lived it. And I know that other people will have other truths or other sides to the story. I wrote as much true to the memories that I have of the time that we spent together. And I also recorded a lot in my diaries, and some of the entries are in the book. I wanted people to know that, yes, André was a world-acclaimed writer, but he was also a man, a human being, and a lovely, beautiful human being.
The inclusion of Ingrid Jonker and André's letters into the book, why? Why did you decide to put this in?
Because just before André's death, he decided to have the correspondence between him and Ingrid Jonker published, and a lot of people thought that when I was then executing those wishes that André had to publish the book, that somehow I was being hurt in the process. And I wasn't. I was really just following up on what he wanted himself. And for me, it was an important part of also of grieving, of being able to work on a project that somehow still felt as if we were doing something together. And I just wanted to record that in my own life, that it was something very special.
Yeah, I mean, you also, you detail those last moments of his life, and I don't think anybody wants to be in a situation where you're in an aeroplane, you're under these circumstances, and the person that you love dearly and most in this world passes away sitting right next to you. I mean, what was that like? I know it is in the book, and did you find a bit of solace writing about it, those last moments?
Very much so, but also I saw from the reactions from a lot of family and friends, and also in the general public, that a lot of people were quite worried and distressed about the circumstances in which André died, because they thought that they must have been horrific. And of course his death was tragic and horrific. And yet I really, and that is why I tell the story, I could not have wished for anything different. In retrospect, it was the way André lived his life. He was never an ordinary person. The way he did everything was on his own terms, and he also died on his own terms in quite a spectacular fashion, flying over Africa and flying home.
And you talk about a spectacular fashion, that certainly is. Just finally, as we wrap this up, how would you like the world to remember André? I mean, we know, obviously there's a lot around him, many stories, but at the end of the day, he was revered all over the world for his writing, his works, and his genius in these novels. But how on a personal level would you think the world should remember this man?
As somebody who was extremely brave and adventurous and passionate about life. And anyone who knew him was inspired by that passion. And I know that I have grown a lot as a person and as a woman and as a writer just by sharing this decade that we had together with him. And I think, yes, this is what I would like people to remember him by, that incredible passion for life
Excellent.
and his integrity.
Beautiful. Absolutely amazing. Thank you for bearing your soul to all of us and for remembering André Brink in such an amazing way. Any film directors knocking on your door yet? No, it's early days. It's just been launched. But there's certainly a movie in the making here.
I am going to consider. I never thought of it before, but...
But it may happen. It may very well happen. The Fifth Mrs Brink, Karina Szczurek, thank you so much for talking to us. Sorry, can I ask you quickly, why the Fifth Mrs Brink?
Because I am the fifth
You are
Mrs.
the fifth?
Brink, yes,
Okay.
I am. And it was something that was almost like an insider joke between us for the entire time we were together. I always said to André, one day, if I ever write a book about us, I'm going to call it The Fifth Mrs. Brink. And he found it very amusing, and he said, you must do that.
Go for it. Go for it. All right. So, The Fifth Mrs Brink, out, bookstores around the country. I think this is an emotional journey you'd want to take to remember one of our legends that have left us. All right, let's take a break. We've got some more after this. Stay tuned.